Yeah.
You might have said something then one thing, but however they perceive it, that's what's most important.
Yeah, it's that filter that they see it through. Good. Good. Good thoughts, guys. So just kind of to tie this together, and then we'll spend the last 40 minutes or so on assessment, and the last 10 minutes is for you guys to fill out an evaluation. They should be coming by with those at some point, I'm guessing. Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah, yeah. We'll make sure. I'll make sure you guys get to see that. So with Jigsaw, if you were to use a strategy like this in terms of creating a respectful classroom environment, the nice thing about a Jigsaw is that it builds off student interest. So you give them some ownership. Instead of always telling kids what they're going to learn and how they're going to learn it, we can give them a little choice and ownership over it. And it tends to just be a little more respectful of their learning needs. And so one of the things we want to avoid is the flexible grouping, the buzzards, the Blue Jays, and the wombats, right? Is that's not flexible grouping. We're not splitting our kids into 3 levels and just using those the entire semester. So just like thinking about respecting kids, one of the ways we can respect our kids is that interest thing I told you about. Okay, there's some research to support this as well in terms of the way the brain works. Motivation leads to greater willingness, retention, and persistence. So if we can give some extra level of motivation by buy-in, through interest, through ownership, that's going to have kids, it's going to help them really retain that information. It's also intrinsically motivating, and that can lead to higher achievement. And so that's the opposite from extrinsic motivation. We're thinking about coming from within that motivation, not I'll bribe you, or we've got this going on, I'll give you some candy if you do this. And not that those things aren't good tools used in the classroom every now and then, but we want the learning to be meaningful to the kids, right? We want it to be about them wanting to own that learning as opposed to us trying to offer rewards for it. Because once those rewards are taken away, they're going to shut down again. And then open-ended questions, as long as they're getting encouragement for expressing their ideas, open-ended questions, those can be supportive as well. And so what we're really trying to do is get them to buy in, like this cat with the assorted rodents and small flightless birds outside the window. As an example, this is what I see a lot of times when I go to schools, especially in middle schools. Do you guys use like intervention enrichment periods, like that flexible block of time? Like sometimes? Okay. Well, there's a lot of schools that I've been to that have it like either at homeroom, and then the second half of the year when the kids are preparing for the tests, they will do like an intervention enrichment block. And what it ends up being is just like rote, like drill and kill learning for the intervention kids. It's like basically you didn't learn it this way the first time, we're going to try it again. So like let me say it louder and maybe you'll get it. And that tends to not work very well. And then the enrichment part ends up being like sustained silent reading for kids. And so there's like, neither are really done very well. We're not really engaging our lower learners, and we're not really engaging our higher learners in instances like that. And so this is kind of an example. So the struggling learners complete the packet of worksheets on force and motion. Check with a partner if you'd like. Turn in with the answer key in the back of the room. Whereas the advanced learners are going to use power tools and natural brilliance to construct a rocket to launch during the homecoming halftime show. We want to make sure we're respecting the lower end of our kids just like the higher end. They all deserve opportunities to be engaged in meaningful learning. It's not about just you need to learn this skill. We're also looking for an appropriate level of challenge. So not only interest, but also challenge. So like over-challenge, the brain gets stimulated, anxious, stressful, tends to shut down. If you guys have ever tried to take on a task that was way too hard, you probably know that feeling. And then the other side to it is, wow, this is so boring, I'm not challenged at all. And the kids will shut down that way too. And so what we're trying to find is that zone of proximal development. So the reasons it is this way is that when we accomplish something that's a novel task, or something that's like unique or new, that we take more pleasure in it and we're more focused on it. And so if you've ever started thinking about something that's really interesting to you and engaging and is appropriately challenging, you tend to be more involved with it. If students believe they can accomplish a task, they're more likely to try it. If they think it's going to be too hard, they're just going to shut down. If they think it's going to be too easy, they may do it, but they're not going to find much pleasure in it. And then the stress state happens when lessons are tedious, not relevant, or anxiety-producing. So we don't want to dumb it down, first of all. We're trying to give kids a boost, a stool, rather than lowering the bar. And heard people have like conversations with their kids about what a little bit too hard is. What does a little bit too hard feel like? That's where we want you to be. If it's way too hard, I don't know where to start. I can't figure it out. If it's way too easy, I get it right away. I already know how. What we're trying to do is find that middle level where I know some things, but I still got to think about it. I know where to get started, but I still have to think about it. And so if you can have conversations with your kids about what's a little bit too hard, then they're more likely to want to take on tasks. Okay, let me get to assessment so we can put things together. Just a couple things about formative assessment. And so, sorry, going back to this is the last one. So we've talked about growth mindset, teacher management, classroom community, respectful instruction, how all those are really important. So the last one is assessment for learning. So assessing kids in an effort to promote success, to promote growth. It's not assessing of learning. We're not assessing you just at the end of a unit to see if you learned it. We're checking along the way. So formative non-graded assessment is less likely to be stressful. It helps build competence, which makes summative assessments less stressful. And it's an effort in clarity, not judgment. So we're not trying to judge kids for what they do or don't know. We're trying to clarify concepts for them while they're learning. That's what assessment should really be. That's what's going to be the most powerful, have the most powerful impact in your classroom, is that ongoing stuff. Do you get this? If so, why? If not, why not? And then going from there. If we're just assessing them at the end after they've learned a concept, then we're, in essence, judging them. So why do we formatively assess? There's an emotional connection with assessment. And so, again, tying back into classroom community, this sort of speaks to that. So people with high assurances in their abilities approach difficult tasks as challenges to be mastered rather than threats to be avoided. They attribute failure to insufficient effort or deficient knowledge and skills which they believe are acquirable. So they're saying that I didn't succeed because I didn't have those skills yet, but I'm going to get those. People who doubt their capabilities shy away from difficult tasks which they view as personal threats. So we think about struggling learners. They're avoidant because they've never been successful with it. They view insufficient performance as deficient aptitude, does not require much failure for them to lose their faith in their capabilities. So anytime, if students aren't resilient to begin with, and we're doubting their capabilities, they're going to recognize that, and they're going to kind of pull away. So a lot of times we do too much testing and not enough feedback giving, but lots of formative assessment really is the key to those gains in student achievement. And so I'll show you some examples of those. But what we're trying to do is help students understand how to close the gap between where they are and where you want them to end up. So what are my goals? Where do I want you guys to be, and how can we close that gap? And so going back to those articles you read, like the ABC do-over, the ABC, I want you to be somewhere in here. Your feedback, how you change your ideas is going to get you in that direction. So we talked about the incremental steps and how those are really important. And it's really important to help our kids be resilient. But the second reason that assessment's important, and I'll show you this clip, is that we don't want our students to end up here. This is from the Tonight Show. He does jaywalking. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that, where he goes out in the streets and just interviews people and asks them basic questions. So this is a battle of the Jaywalk All-Stars when he brings them back into the studio and has like a Jeopardy type show. And so if we're checking on concept development along the way, hopefully our students won't end up like this.